Transfer portal success will soon lead to college football playoff success.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your latest recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. And I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst, to bring you all the updates. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Intuit TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. The transfer portal has transcended college athletics, and it is, quite honestly, a major factor for which teams win big in college football. Today, I'm going to go over a few of the guys that were really good players that were pickups for some big-time programs, but not necessarily the number one player that they signed or the number one player on any of the rankings from All-3, 24/7, Rivals, etc., but will help transcend which teams go to the playoff and have success. You've got to meet your needs at positions that are critical to success overall. And I'm going to give you a few examples today, primarily on defense. I'm going to mention one offensive player too, but primarily this is about defensive impact transfer portal guys, helping teams take that next step, maybe making the college football playoff. If, of course, they have some luck with injuries, that's always the biggest key, as much as that is unfortunate. If you have success avoiding a few of the key injuries with a couple additional players, you change your season from 8-4 to 11-1 pretty quick. That's what this is about. So here's the number one thing that I want to talk about. The player that got a lot of attention due to how the transfer happened, if you will, Xavier Lucas from Wisconsin to Miami. The Hurricanes stunk in the secondary last year. They were terrible. But at the same time, there's new pieces and parts coming in from the portal as well as the coaching staff, and that's going to help. But I'm telling you right now, even though he just barely played over 200 snaps last year as a true freshman for Wisconsin, Xavier Lucas, a 6'1" corner that is from South Florida originally, and he's going back home. That could be the key for Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes making it to the 2025 college football playoff. Allow me to explain. It's about how many opportunities you have to put somebody out there and compete. Xavier Lucas is a pure corner that's at least 6'1". There aren't a lot of those guys. I see all these height 6'3s and all that. I've stood next to Xavier Lucas. That is a big kid, and he can change directions and make plays that most guys his size cannot. Sure, he only played 200 snaps. He started the last game against Nebraska last year, but that's not the point. Miami needs players that have a lot of athleticism, that have that moxie to them. He's a South Florida kid, so he'll fit in just fine within the Hurricanes roster and their locker room. And that defense, if they can get just a little bit better in the secondary, they're going to win 10 games. If they get a lot better, it's not out of the question. They could go 11-1 or 12-0. Is it likely? No, it's still really hard. But adding that one extra piece is what this whole pod is about. And Miami exemplifies that with Xavier Lucas coming over from Wisconsin. They needed corner help. They still have other good players. Damari Brown will hopefully be healthy, etc. And Miami still may not make it, but if they didn't get a few extra pieces, and he's just one of the DBs, by the way, that Miami added in Xavier Lucas, but it is transcending to get those kinds of players with tremendous upside, tremendous athleticism, and he's going to be in a new scheme. We'll see how it goes. But if you do not get those guys, do you really think Miami's going to make any kind of playoff run? It's one thing to make it, by the way, but actually do anything? Again, their secondary stunk last year. Not bad, stunk. They needed an influx of new people coaching it, as well as making sure they had new players running the system. So hats off to Cristobal and his staff for adding to it. I think they're going to be a lot better than people think on defense. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. To that point, another team, just exactly the same, and it shouldn't happen at this school ever either, just like it shouldn't happen at Miami having a bad secondary. That's LSU. For the love of mankind, how hard it is to have a good defense at LSU with all the in-state talent. I was just at Under Armour, New Orleans. The number of DBs in Mississippi, Houston, and the Bayou, just those three states / areas, You could have a top 10 passing defense each and every year, and LSU was abysmal the last couple of years. It's amazing how bad it's been. But they had a good recruiting class, DJ Pickett, etc. And they also added something that I think is more important than just raw talent. Now, you got to have skill to play in the secondary. I understand that. But too many times last year, it wasn't the physical trait that cost LSU players to make bad decisions and all that. It's just being on the same page. It's not they weren't intelligent. It's not they weren't physically gifted. They just didn't know where they were going. Guys were just scot-free. You needed somebody in the back end of the defense, the free safety, to set the chessboard, to make things go right. It can be the strong safety, however your defense lines it up. That's fine. Here's why LSU did well. They signed multiple DBs with experience and talent, including corner. But a guy that's not getting enough attention to mitigate what happened at LSU is Tamarcus Cooley coming over from NC State. He played over 500 snaps last year at NC State. He's played 2 years of college football. He had over 30 tackles. He had 8 stops, meaning plays at or near the line of scrimmage. So he's a physical cat too. This is a player that will set the example with his style of play. Lord only knows LSU needs to tackle better. I'm sure I speak for all LSU fans in that regard, but he will help set the defense. If I had a nickel for every time I saw somebody scot-free in LSU secondary over the last 2 years, I'd have a really nice savings plan going. He will help mitigate that. And with the quarterback returning, still a ton of skill talent on offense and defense for that matter, if they just play together and just don't have busted plays, LSU can be a top 5 team next year. While Tamarcus Cooley, I don't expect him to be the best player in the secondary necessarily. He may be not only the most valuable in the secondary in the defense, but he might be the most important player in their defense and overall on the team. You could at least make that argument. We'll see how it plays out, but they need leadership in that back end to make sure people are accountable and doing their job. Last year, and even more so the year before, LSU just failed. They were awful in the secondary. Same thing with Miami. If you do not get these guys in the transfer portal, you can't really, I love DJ Pickett. I've known him for a long time, but do I really think he's going to come in and just transcend the secondary and make all the calls and all that? Plus, he's a quiet kid. No, that's not how this works. You must hit home runs in the transfer portal when you have holes that big. Again, it's amazing it happened at LSU, but it still did. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a couple more players that I think are going to be big additions, Missouri and other places. And we're also going to talk a little bit about why NIL, this is the last run right now for the big money and some of the contracts, how it's going to change. That is next here on The Portal. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now taxes, it's matching with TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find your every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Defense still wins championships. Pass rush, an elite corner taking away a team's best player, at least for the most part, making the other team adjust. And that's why I wanted to focus a little bit more on defense after talking about Xavier Lucas and Tamarcus Cooley going to Miami and LSU respectively. A really unique transfer to me that is sneaky because people don't often think about this program being a threat to make the college football playoff would be the Missouri Tigers, as they picked up big-time pass rusher from the University of Georgia, Damon Wilson. This is a young man that I knew when he was at Venice High School in Florida. He was a 420-pound bench guy in high school as a defensive end. Not your normal kind of athlete. Very, very gifted and motivated. Went to Georgia, did well. He's played a couple of years. Now he has a chance to be a stalwart at Missouri. They've got a good defense, but they needed more help on the edge, especially with Williams Nwaneri leaving. And remember that name. We're going to come back to this in about 3 minutes. You add a pass rusher that's got proven production against elite competition, against Bama and Texas, etc., and you're a team that's probably flying under the radar. Most people don't think Missouri can make the playoff this year. They lost Cook, etc. They could. The defense is a major reason why. When you add an elite pass rusher to a good scheme, to a team with a lot of talent, and not an unbelievably difficult schedule this next year in the SEC, it's still Southeastern Conference. I understand that. But Missouri is a dark horse to make the playoff. Do not be shocked if Damon Wilson's production and his ability to make other teams, okay, where's Damon at on this play? It's 3rd and 6. He will help other players just by being on the field. He is a first-round draft pick. He's going to be there 1 year at Missouri. He's going to have a big year. Watch out for the Missouri Tigers. Also, just because they needed a little more help, they obviously lost a great receiver after this past year. Kevin Coleman Jr. coming home. Just want to throw that out there. He's the one offensive player I want to mention today. He's from St. Louis, played at Mississippi State. He's going to be at Mizzou this year. He's got proven production, big-bodied receiver. He's going to help them quite a bit. Finally, I mentioned Williams Nwaneri a few moments ago. That's a really good football player. When I saw him at Under Armour just over a year ago, I saw him walk out on the field, and I'm like, my goodness. That's what it's supposed to look like. 6'5", 250, give or take a few pounds, and just small waist, broad shoulders, extremely long arms, natural athlete. Goes to Missouri, stays in state, gets a humongous check to go to Missouri, but then he leaves right after to go to Nebraska. Here's the point. I don't know all the details for his contract. Quite honestly, I'm not really concerned about it. This much I know. Again, it was a big contract. Too much, quote unquote, upfront money is going to some of these kids. And a lot of schools have already taken this path, but even more will. I think Missouri will be one. You have to be here X amount of time to get some of this money. Georgia, Notre Dame, Penn State, some of the schools that have had a lot of success being more conservative with NIL, they're kind of paving the way. Now, I know this is an unusual year, and I even talked about it in the last 48 hours on this channel here at the Portal Podcast. Because of the House settlement in July, this will be the biggest year for NIL. How the contract is structured is still different, though. We're going to see more of a growing trend where you got to earn it. There are going to be some exceptions, but too many kids take the money and then transfer. And here's the reason why. There are too many people, there's no nice way to say this, that are very bad influences around these young men. Very bad. The third uncle, the street agent, whatever it may be, they got their hand out. They're trying to get money just for them to take the kid on the visits and all this stuff. Many of those people are getting pushed to the side. There are exceptions. There'll still be some that find a way to slither into it. Got a weak situation at home, parents aren't around, whatever it may be. But overall, the universities are getting smarter and smarter. You're not going to see kids suddenly leave after they get that check. There's been way too many of those cases that I've been told about. You're going to see a change. Got to stay till year 2 to get this bonus. You got to, do certain things with community service, whatever. Make the school look good to get some of your money. That's coming for across the board. It's already, again, started at some schools, but you're going to see more and more of it. Too many guys have, quite honestly, taken advantage of the athletic departments, and some of it, honestly, is their fault too. You should have saw some of this coming, but we're going to see less and less of it. Doesn't mean the overall contract number will be different. It's how the cash is distributed. More and more of that's going to happen, and you're going to see some teams suddenly, why aren't they on that young man's list anymore? It's because they don't want to deal with all the off-the-field stuff, with the people coming in always wanting more money, this and that. Less is more. That is my prediction for today, and I am steadfast with it because people I've spoken with on both sides of the ledger, they're not going to deal with the idiot brigade that's trying to force some of these transactions. They'll bypass it. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to get all your recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I will see you again later. Everybody have a good one.